go. I'll try to keep you guys over on the right here, though I usually want, we'll see. I might move you guys back to the left, but I'm trying to keep, I want to keep the video there so I know where you guys can't see. Oh, Rich is back. Good. She's back. Awesome. All right, tough. Again, what we're gonna do, if we look, let's pull up the website. Let's see, where's that? Over here. All right, back to our site. So right now, go back home, I'm gonna actually refresh it. I want to see again that I lose my login. I'm no longer logged in. But at the same time, right now, I go to the news app. It loads, pulls in all this information. So again, the Java stuff, the Java exploit, which we may look at what we're searching for again. We got that. If I go back home or the sign up page and I go back to news, you see it reloads again. This is because the components, when I leave this screen, are getting unmounted, is the term. So when I go to the screen, this news component is getting mounted to the screen. That's what the use effect command is doing. That use effect. Let's close a bunch of these down so we can clean up a little bit what we got here. That was actually what I wanted, but I want to clean everything up. There we go. So news. So we see here in news, we've got articles. So we go to articles quick. We'll see that the use effect right here. So use effect is what triggers during an on mount. So when the component gets mounted or loaded, the original term is mounting, but I feel like they should be changing it to on load now, but we'll see. I think they still use the term mounting. When the item gets mounted, it runs through here, runs the functions, and use effect will trigger. As we have this item here, it only gets run that once. It will not get run again on re-renders. Use effect will only get rerun if a variable put inside of this array is modified. So I can tell it, hey, monitor articles, and every time articles changes, rerun this. Now, this is actually not something you want to do, so do not type this, because what's happening here is that I'm going to change articles here. And so when I change it, it's going to tell it to rerun it, which means it's going to rerun it again. It's going to get the articles again. It's going to update it again, and then rerun it again. See the problem? So don't put that there. But that is what this array is there for. If you want to trigger a reload, so what I could do here is if we had a search bar on this page, I could tell the use effect to re-render every time the search gets entered, and then search on the search. So every time the search bar changes or gets submitted or something like that, I can tell it to rerun this. That makes sense? That's something I could do. I could have it monitor the search item or the search or the query state. So got that. But what's happening here, like I said, so now when I go away, when I go back home, that component is no longer being loaded to the screen. It's no longer mounted, so it gets what's called unmounted. And so it gets removed, and then when I go back to it, it remounts, so it has to re-pull that information. So just to see it, if I go to inspect, network, preserve the log, so that way it stays as I go around. Go home first, go back to news, we'll see, there it is, there's the pull from it, news Java, I'll go back to sign up, I'll go back to news again, there it is again, login, news, home, news. Every time I go back to news, we see that call gets pulled, right? Not great. What I probably want to do actually to save ourselves from hitting we know that the news API has a certain amount of pulls. What I could do in this instead is have the application pull the news when I first visit the site with a provider and provide that item every time I go to the page, and then provide a get news or refresh news button on the page to get new news, right? I can put it at the bottom of the page, somewhere on the page to say get update news or refresh, right? I could put a refresh button up here, right? Is it the most user-friendly system? No. Most systems, most people are expecting to always get the most modern stuff. We are a non-modern website, and we are not paying for this right now. So we're going to use whatever we can to save ourselves a little bit of performance. So, and again, it's a great example of, again, how to use providers. So let's do that. So providers, let's create a new provider. So new file. Use provider. Yes. And don't be afraid to pull up if you have another provider or use my code literally on the side to evaluate, make sure you're not forgetting anything. So you're not forgetting what to put. This is not going to be exact because it doesn't have what we need to be able to pull the data. But you do this to make sure you don't forget the basic stuff, the template stuff. What do you need to import? You need to import React state React at minimum. We're going to create const use context React.create context. What we see here again is that array of the information that we have. So I'm going to do that for now. Const.
That always empty on line 3.
What's that?
Is the context always empty in the beginning like that all the time?
It's the starting value again.
Okay.
The initial value. Because we're actually going to give the initial value off and select off here, we just need to tell it that it's going. You always want this empty. You're just telling it what is it going to contain, what type of information is it going to contain. Is it an object, an array, or just a static value like a string or something? And so if I want to just get a string, I would tell it, hey, I'm just going to give you a single value or single variable.
Oh, okay.
Hey, I'm going to give you you're going to store an object. In this case, we're just telling it, hey, you're storing an array. This is the array that we then give it later on. So I'm just letting it know what it's going to get.
Okay, yeah, no, that's good to know that I can have different types in there. I didn't know I could have different types in that too. Okay.
Oh yeah,
good.
And I might actually change this later to be an object just so we can see something cool, but we'll see in a second. With that, I'm going to go ahead and we need the props. So you see here props. If we want to know why we need props, we double click on it. We see, oh, there's highlighted there. We need props children. So I'm going to need props. Bring that in. And right here is where we're going to create our state. This is our data that we want to store, that anytime it changes, we want to make sure that it does update or re-render anything below it that is reliant on this item. So we want to use state. We want to remember state triggers re-renders. Static variables or just random variables do not trigger re-renders if they change. States or state variables will trigger re-renders when the set function is run. Const the array, we'll do news.
You're going to need a parentheses after props.
I do. Thank you. Did not know. I don't know where that went. That was there originally. Equals use state. In this case, we're going to have just articles or news, I guess. So really, this is going to be this is actually going to be an array of items. Yeah, it's going to be an array of articles. So we'll just give it an empty array to start. We see here, if this was a data collecting provider, we can do the use effect method would go here, but let's just at least do all the basics first, get all this other stuff in there first. And we gotta do the news context, which is what we have right here. Provider turns this into a component. So that's what now we're giving. We're giving the provider component. And that's why the item's called provider, because this is the component that's being returned by this file. We're actually returning the two things, but the component we're building is the provider. Is the information that is being provided to the children components. I'm going to provide both the news. Actually, we're just going to provide the news. This one actually doesn't need anything else. Actually, no, I'm going to do this for a second. I'm actually not going to do an array. I'm just going to do a nothing and just give it that. Just good news. Because we're going to be having the use effect change. Oh, no, wait. I'm trying to think a second. Trying to think. Yelling at me. Is it? Okay. I think. Maybe I do want it to rerun again. And we'll follow the original just in case. You might come back and decide to remove it later, but We'll put both in for the moment. Most likely we won't be using set news outside of this because we're going to be using it for the use effect when we pull the data down. But again, for the moment, we'll follow this as a way and then see how we can change it later on. When we realize, oh yeah, we're never using this, we can then remove it. For the moment, I'm going to keep it the basics. So you can see that process of how I can realize I can change it, how I can decide to change it later. But again, you don't need to know exactly how it needs to look in the beginning when you first create it. You can realize what it needs to be as you build it, that you can recognize, oh, hey, you know what? I'm never using set news out there. I'm going to remove it. So we'll do that. Don't think I need it, but yeah. Do that more as we get to it. So props.children. Use provider and use. That is a basic provider. Again, this currently doesn't do anything, and we were relying on someone else to update the information. And that's what our auth provider does. The auth provider sets everything to null to start, and we're expecting someone else, one of the children, to update the system when it gets the data, and it will change it. But again, we can then provide it still to anyone else. So that's the whole purpose of this thing. The auth provider simply makes these variables, this variable and this function available to any children that wants it by using context, by bringing the context in. That's what this one's doing. We're now going to update this a little bit by making it actually do something on its own so that it will collect the data on its own in the beginning. So we're going to do use effect, which, remember correctly, was part of the imports from React. And we'll see that. I'm going to bring articles over now so we can see how that works. So use effect. Let's bring that in. Use effect is simply a function, like I said, that can run every time it re-renders. Use effect is a function and also an array of elements that it needs to monitor. So we can put both in if we want right from the get-go to start, and then we can actually define that function, what we want it to actually do. Sanity check, what do we want this to do again?
Call the API and get the news.
We'll call our backend API to get the news. Remember how we did that?
It's a route. Online 13.
Yeah, I know. That was actually a rhetorical question, but yes. Get the news from the API. We know that that's something that is synchronous or asynchronous. It takes time to do. That is not something that is an instant response. We know that we ask Java 2+2, it responds right away. When we do an API call, we have to wait for that external service to actually respond back to our system. Java does not like to wait, and Axios does not. Axios will tell it, will say, okay, I'll get that and I'll let you know when I'm done. Axios is a promise type system that'll say, hey, as soon as I get it, I'll let you know. So Java, on the other hand, JavaScript, on the other hand, will then continue these other lines if we don't tell it to wait for this item to finish. We don't need to use async await. There are other ways of handling the system, such as callbacks and such as then and catch. So you have .then and there's other ways of making sure we actually get the response, we wait for the response or interact or use the response we get. There's other ways we can handle it. Async await is the more modern version right now. That's the more common, more modern version you're going to see nowadays, because it involves less indentation, less methods or parentheses and stuff. So again, the main thing I want to clarify is that use effect cannot accept an asynchronous function. You cannot give it an async function. It is not allowed to have it. So we must create one inside. There's your computer, Taylor. Nice to see it. If I create a function outside of here, use effect will want to monitor it and is considered poor performance. So we're going to create the function inside of use effect. This is just React's requirements. This is what React wants to see. Just be aware of that there are other ways to do it, but if you do it, you'll probably get warnings telling you React wants to do this, React doesn't like that. So this is just how React prefers it. And as I said before, the underscore is just a canonical way of showcasing that this function is asynchronous, that is an async await function. It is not required. It is a style preference from JavaScript developers. It is not required in any sense. And to prove it, this one we're actually not going to do the underscore, just to showcase it's not required. I'm also going to change something here. Async. Query. I'm going to put a term called query there. Makes sense later. I'm prepping something for later on. Some of you might start figuring out what I'm doing as we go forward, but for the moment, don't worry about it. It's going to make more sense as we go forward, but I'm prepping for something for you guys. So the try catch. Whenever I do a try catch, before I put anything in the try, because the try gets angry as if it doesn't have a catch, it does not like it until you put the catch in. Error. Error. Try now, we'll do const response. That's what rest means. Rest is short for response. It's very common. Rec and rest. You'll see those a lot. Wait, Axios. So now we need Axios. Let's make sure so if you have it set up, you can enter import. Otherwise, don't forget to put the import above. So you can use Axios to get calls. And again, Axios, for those of you who may have done it, that's your simpler XML request or jQuery HTTP request or any of those. jQuery used ajax.get or ajax.post. The normal JavaScript, I think, uses like HTTP XML request, something like that. So Axios is just a simpler version of that that makes life easy for you guys. It does a lot of the extra typing is already built in as default behavior. So Axios.get. That's our test news route right here. And what we're going to do here, though, we're going to do a slight change. Instead of doing single quotes, I'm going to take advantage of that Java syntax we talked about last time, which is the backticks, string interpolation. And so we're going to put the backticks. We'll go ahead and take this URL up to the word Java. We're going to copy it. And then paste it in here and then do the $ curly bracket. And this is how I can inject Java code.
Right, your concatenation with your strings.
Yep, I believe, isn't that called interpolation? You can like inject a string right into it. Concatenation is when you add two strings together, combine them. Interpolation or injection? I can't remember. I'll have to double check. I'm questioning
I think it's
my.
interpolation because it's also
it is.
the template literals.
That's another term for, yeah, template. I think this might be considered a template literal too. There's a lot of terminologies for strings that you might want to brush up on. And I don't blame sometimes for you guys for forgetting them because sometimes my brain is like, am I using the right one? I think I am. So we will definitely review them a bit more as we get closer to the interview. But right here, we'll just do query. Don't need to console log it anymore. I'm just going to do set news. Oh, sorry. Yeah, set news to rest.data. Look good. Don't have to question this though. Actually, now I'm thinking about it because I just realized everything here is using the word article and articles. Thinking of changing our news to articles, keeping it news provider, but changing the variable to articles and set articles. What do you guys think? So you don't have to change as much here in this area.
If it's less typing, go for it.
Let's do it. So articles. We do them right here, do articles, and then down here, just change these two. There we go. That's it. So, line 24, 7, and 15 are the ones that get changed. All good? Speak now if you ever hold your
One
peace.
second, hold on.
Thank you.
Yeah, forgot I was
Someone
muted.
would say something. No worries.
I should be good.
The last thing I'm going to do, though, of course, is actually call the function so that it actually gets done. So right here in use effect, we're actually going to do get news. Or let's do a new one now. Let's do spring boot. So you can see new results that we know that they are using this one now instead of this one. Make sense? So that once we actually run our system, we'll know that we're getting new articles than this one. So save that. Now we have to go, we want to bring the provider in. So we need to bring the provider in to our system. Again, we could bring this, there's a couple places, again, we can think about this. If I go to app.js, we know we're putting the auth provider here so that it's available to the entire application. I don't know if our news needs to be available to the entire application, but at the same time, we want to make sure it doesn't get unloaded. Let's take a look at our router for a second and see if that makes more sense. Here on the router, I know the navbar doesn't need it. Navbar doesn't need access to it. And while yes, news needs it, we did mention the fact that we might want our geek outs to have access to news. We might want to make a geek out from our news. So in this application, actually, I'm thinking it's not that chancy. So we'll probably just put it where in app.js, now that I think about it, because the only other place that really makes sense for me would be right here. It's almost like, I don't know, weird to put it here. What do you guys think? Where do you guys like it? What does make sense for you guys?
So if you put it in, if you put it here, it's only here, but if you put it into app.js, it's more, it'll be a global like variables.
Yeah. It'll be
Okay.
available to any component that we create.
Hmm.
I will say overall, it's not going to really it's not going to change our performance at all because this item is always loaded. So it will load right away, whether we put it here or we put it here, it's going to load the instant we load the website.
Hmm.
The only reason why it wouldn't is if we put it in somewhere else. But again, if we do that, there's a chance it could get unmounted, and that's a problem.
Hmm.
So this more would be a preference. There's no real correct answer here for this one. In more complex projects or applications, there might be a better location. If there were several news like routes that we were clicking through as we went around, or other routes here that we were clicking through to get around to, then you might be able to do something different. We could even just wrap the routes that care about the news articles only in that by putting the routes in there, because that would change the order of the nav bar too. But that's where you're kind of splitting hairs there. Yeah, the main thing, there were more pages here. We want to make sure the news is available on multiple pages. We could then argue that, but for this, I think it'll be fine just putting it in app.js. That way, all the providers are in the same spot for you guys. So you can go see them at the same place. I also want to fix this. Why are you badly indented? That's annoying me. What do you do? Get over there. Thank you. So I'm gonna put it here because this will also bring up the idea that there is this concept of a master provider. So one thing you can do in the provider item is just create a provider component that has all the other providers inside of it. And so in this screen, you would just see provider, and it would store all the smaller providers. If that makes sense. It would just be a standard component. It would just load all the providers, put them in one by one, and then you would just put it in here. So as you add more providers to your project as it gets bigger, because as your project gets bigger, you may need more and more providers that are global. And this could get a bit ugly looking because we add another one, we're just going to do this. Provider. And you can see as we add more providers, that's going to get a little ugly, right? A little hard to maintain. So yeah, some places what you'll see is a provider. What we'll call it. Some will call it root provider. But main provider, root provider, provider, app provider, something like that. Yeah, we'll
But you
put that
can,
there.
you can make like group providers. You can have one that will have the author news and call that one, and then have another one where, may have 3 different other providers and you just put
Yep.
them where they belong or where they need
Yeah.
in the application.
As much as I want to show all the variations of like examples, I don't have time or the ability to really
No,
create an
no.
application that could show all the variety of it, but providers can go where they're needed, and it is okay to allow providers to get unmounted and to lose their data just to bring it back when they bring back if it's part of a less common page. I can guarantee that in Facebook won't load all your groups until you go to the group page. But once you're in the group page, it doesn't want to reload that while you're browsing around all your groups. So as you're looking around, it's going to keep that open. So when you go back to the main page, it's just going to keep loading the original group page, thing that it already loaded. It doesn't want it to load again every time you go back to that page. Now, if you leave the group system and go to like your friends list or your home page, it's probably fine dropping the data and not storing it because it doesn't want to. Well, I don't know if they care about bogging down your system. Facebook doesn't really care, but it could if it wanted to. It doesn't need to store that once you leave the group system to go, like, let's say the marketplace. It's like, all right, I can drop the group system. I can drop all that data. I don't need to store it. That makes sense? So more complex sites can have more complex setups of your providers. Since we're a pretty basic site, we'll have a pretty basic setup of our providers. Cool, so we have that in there. So now we have the news provider, which means now again, any component below this as a child of this item can have access to the news component or the news context by just using that context. So now in our article system, we're going to update this to actually use that context. I'm going over here now. So we're going to do now, comma, use context. So instead of doing articles, set articles here, I'm going to do in using use state. Instead, I'm going to do use context. Context. Make sure it imports it. I feel like it's an update to Java to Visual Studio Code because I don't remember it doing that. It's awesome. Because we're doing this now, we're no longer going to use the use effect. Comment that out. Note here it says we're not using set articles, so I'm actually not going to bring that. Don't do that. Close that. I'm going to not bring the set articles in. I'm just going to bring in articles. Since it is the first item, I can do that. We did talk about how in our auth system, I'm going to sign up. Where is it? Just bring that up again quick so you can see it. In the register system, we brought in both auth and set auth, even though we weren't using auth, because I can't bring in set auth unless auth is there because arrays are indexed. They're 1 by 1. I can't tell it to skip the first one unless I bring it in. But since I'm only using the first one, I'm not using the second, I don't have to bring in the second item. I can bring in just the first item. So this I can do. Bring in the first item only. I cannot bring in the second item only. Sound good? Difference. All right. Anybody see a problem with my page right now? Anything that could possibly go wrong?
The set loading in your second const line 9 is still grayed out. Wouldn't that mean that would create an issue?
Yes, do you know how?
Besides the code being commented out, I couldn't explain it.
No worries, you're on the right page. Yes, there's something wrong with this. This is going to cause a problem. The question is how? Can anyone figure it out? Anyone take a
Oh,
guess?
is it because the use state true? We're not using state as context.
Sorry, what?
You had to change line 8 for from use state to use context. Wouldn't that be the same case for the end of your statement, line 9? Instead of it being use state true, it would be use context true.
Possibly, I can see where you're going with that, but to help understand why not, do we have a loading or set loading context? Do we have a loading context? or provider. And the two providers, anything in any of the, and here's my two providers. Anything in these refer to loading in any way.
Not that I see immediately.
Right, so not quite the solution. Great guess, great guess. And probably something we want to consider later on. That, yeah, why we don't have anything loading right now. So again, now I'm trying to figure out like, where is my problem here? So take a look at this line and think about why this might be a problem. So yes, set loading isn't being used because we did comment it out, which means what technically? If set loading is never used, what if we use our logic, does that mean about the loading variable? We never use set loading. What do we know about loading? Guesses, people. No one's gonna be right or wrong.
No,
The state can never change.
State never changes, right? It never changes. Good guess, Travis said it might be null, but where is the default value set for this? Do you know, Travis? Where
no,
we set the default rate? Ah, okay. Does anyone know where we set the default for this?
Loading on line 36.
Doesn't look like I'm setting anything. It looks like I'm checking it. Where do we give it the default value or the starting value?
It's a Boolean, so it would be considered false by default, correct?
Technically, yes, but you are allowed to give a starting value to a state item.
Okay.
Read the whole line, people.
That's true right there.
Where, Connor?
You state true.
Right there. Yes, that is it. The default value is what you put inside of useState. Remember, the parameter you send to useState is the default value for the variable on this side right here. So we put the word true here to say loading by default is true. So we have a loading that is set to true and it never changes. So now knowing that, what can we say is a problem with the rest of this code? Is there any problem with our code, with our site now? If our loading is true and never changes.
It will never actually
Page will
load.
never load.
It'll just show loading.
Will always be here on this side. There we go. Good stuff. That's why I like doing these little walkthroughs, because it's good to just make sure we understand what's happening and how this stuff is working. And 100%, because this is stuck here on true, this ternary expression down here will never evaluate to not true, and so our articles will never display. For the moment, now that means that probably there's something we probably do want to change this somehow. How do we use this? But for the moment, I just want to make sure that our context works. So I'm just going to say set this to false by default, which originally is going to display nothing. And then eventually it's just going to display the articles. We won't have a loading or spinner or anything like that in the beginning. It's just going to display nothing. And then once the use effect finishes, it'll load. There's a good chance though, and I'm going to make sure we have the inspection tab open. There's a high chance that actually by the time we go to the new screen, the articles will already be loaded from our backend. That by the time we go there, it'll already be there. Because as soon as we load the website, it's already going to start pulling our data down, even though we're not on the page. By the time we go to it, it's probably already going to be pulled. Let's make sure we save all of these files. Everything's saved. Good. Go back here and what the? All right.
Guess all the news on Spring Boot is Chinese.
Well, you got a query. You got a query in there too, didn't you? You add a query.
Well, that was the Java. Yeah, I changed the Spring Boot. Yeah. So if we pull up right here, the query is just the placeholder for Spring Boot.
Oh, Spring Boot right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me go ahead and refresh the page for a second. I'm also going to clear out the log. So we'll clear the log so we have a fresh thing. So I'm going to refresh the page now. And you can see right there, it's already pulling it. And so when I click on news, it's already loaded. And yep, apparently it's all from a Chinese source right now. What the hell? All right. Probably a way to add an EN to that somewhere, but fun. I don't have before. No, let's just check this quick. Let's switch this back to
2 words. Try Spring Boot with a
what
2
is
seconds.
it percent? What is the space for
Is it
URLs?
percent or ampersand?
Percent 20? I think it's something. Percent 20?
Hmm.
No.
I think that's right.
I'll double check. URL space encoding. Oh, yeah, I think it is percent 20. Holy crap. I got it right? Kidding me. I did, apparently. Think. I don't know. Did I? That doesn't look like Spring Boot stuff.
Yeah, it is percent 20.
Good, but
It's assigned to number 32, which is 20 in hexadecimal.
why am I getting an improves English clubs await moment of truth in Champions Cup?
The question is it searching strictly for spring space boot, or is it searching for them as 2 separate words?
Spring and boot. Yep, probably searching for 2 separate things. This probably has the word spring in it or boot. Jesus Christ. Can't win. We're just gonna switch this to JavaScript now. Screw it. We did React last time. JavaScript. Save. There we go.
Yeah, make coffee.
Hacking. More hacking. Researchers call NSO zero-click iPhone exploit incredible and terrifying. Wonderful. And something about the rock. All right. What? What does that have to do with JavaScript? I'm so confused. Anyway, all good.
The new Fast and Furious it's all computer and coding based. It's all
It's gotta be. Yep, they apparently have a JavaScript hacker in there.
So
Back in the
they
cars.
found a way to make Tron edgy. Great.
Fast and Furious is written all in JavaScript.
So what's really cool about this, by the way, and what you guys didn't notice, so let me go back to let me go ahead and go back home. Let me clear this out again quick. Load the page. So we load it, we see, hey, there's our JavaScript pull. We got all this JavaScript from our system running, but that's it, right? We pull all these articles, but nothing happened yet. As soon as we go to the news page, then we see it pull all the images. And so that's kind of nice that it won't do that until we actually go to the page. So if someone comes to our system, they won't pull they won't do a lot of bandwidth on our site, even though that's not actually pulling from our site. It's actually pulling from external sources, which is great. But it's not actually going to do any sort of like lagging on the user side. It's not going to try to load any photos into cache until they go to the page. So there's our news provider. So now let's update this to actually use the loading system because, while yes, currently our system will run this very quickly. Let's just say, for the fun of it, someone who's on like a 3G mobile device wants to go to our page and wants to go straight to the news, or they just do 3000/news and go straight to that page. As you see right now, if we go straight to news immediately, we see blank. We have no spinner, no loading. So if someone wants to go to news directly, they're not going to get our loading or our spinner anymore. So what I want to do is actually update our system to use a loading system, just in case. So that's going to be on our news provider. What kind of, hold on, make sure we can clarify this bit further. So back in articles, we need to be able to set loading to false, but we also need to be able to change it to true as soon as the data becomes available. So it doesn't necessarily belong to the articles page anymore, does it? Loading is a state of the provider now, right? We need to know whether or not the news provider is loading the data, correct? We don't need to know if the articles component is loading. We need to know if the articles provider is loading the news. And so it makes sense to me move this information to the provider as well. So let's go to the news. Let's go to the news provider and let's add loading. Loading. State.
Set load
And
in.
we'll set to true. Start.
You got a T there, not a G.
Where?
Set load
Oh,
in.
thank you. Set loading. There we go.
I think we should set
Again.
loading along.
Oh, dear. Yeah, use state true. Again, as you see here, these are where this. So this one, I'm like, figure why you guys might not have caught on that this is the default behavior, because this doesn't really look like a default starting value. It just looks like, oh, you put an array there. Yeah, this is setting the default value of loading to true. This is setting the default value of our articles to an empty array, saying we have no arrays yet, or have no articles. And we don't want to set this to null. We want to set it to an array because our articles item is going to try to dot map it. And if our articles was null, dot map will crash it. Dot map only works on arrays. So we must make sure that articles always is always an array, because there's ever a chance that it's not an array, articles.map will crash our system or will fail it. It'll get angry. So that's why we want to make sure it starts as an empty array, not as null. In case anyone was wondering why we do that, that's why. If we didn't, we would have to put some sort of conditional in this item to check, hey, is articles an array? And if it is, go ahead and do this. And if not, don't do anything. This is better because React can render empty arrays as nothing. There. So loading and set loading. When we first go into use effect, we want to set loading to true. Make sure it's loading, it's set to true. And then as soon as we get the articles and we set them, we're going to go ahead and set loading to false. Even though we defaulted to true, we do also want to make sure it gets set to true in case for some way we do get this to run again. All right. So we have that now. And now we want to make sure we can provide this loading variable to the articles component. Now I can show that this does not have to match anything up here. We know we don't use set articles in our system, right? We've already said that before. We don't use set articles. Articles only get set by the provider, so we don't need to provide that. I also want to clarify again, we don't have to do an array. I can actually set this to be an object if I want to. And now I can do an object of articles and loading. Provide the two variables. And again, this is an ES6 shortcut where this is equal to that is very repetitive. So again, ES6 gave us the shortcut is that if the key and variable are the same, we can just provide the variable and JavaScript will handle that. We don't need to provide both the key and the name. We can just provide the key or the variable and it'll create a key with the same value of the variable name. That makes sense? What I will do here is just do this quick so you can see. All right, can't do that there because that's inside of JSX, so that's gonna be upset with me. That. There. That's how you know that if you do this, it's equivalent to articles, loading, loading. Sound good? It's a nice little shortcut you guys can see. If this makes more sense, go ahead and do that. But just saving you some typing. Yes, if your key is ever different from your variable name, then type it out. This only works if the variable name and the key are going to be the same. At that, I'm going to save this now. It's going to yell at us because if we do try to load it, because it's trying to pull an array on our articles list. So this is trying to pull an array out, which is not going to work. So let's switch this from articles and array to bracket articles. Comment that line out. Comma loading. Like that. So the brackets, I can put them in whatever order I want. Now that it's an object, I can put it whatever order I want. I'll do that. I'll say it again. So far, so good. Anybody pull back up the provider again so we can make sure we got that. So
I think I might have missed a step somewhere.
yeah, so console loading, set loading on line 8. And then down here we have articles and loading as brackets. So double bracket, make these a little bigger too. It's easier to see. There.
Okay.
So the two files we changed right here on articles and on news provider. I've updated them so you can see what they look like.
Okay, let's see.
So what we changed was line 8. We added in the new state of loading and set loading, default to true. In our use effect, we added line 22, set loading to true, and then get news. And then we added line 17, set loading to false.
Okay.
On line 29, we changed our value to be curly bracket, articles loading, curly bracket, curly bracket.
Yep.
Oh, and on line 4, create context now has a curly bracket in it instead of an array.
Oh,
That one, yeah, I figured that one might be the one we also missed because that way I did very, very fast. I forgot that. To point that out a bit better. Line 4, use
Okay.
context now has an object in it, not an array.
okay. Oh, no, we don't have that at all.
Just for a second, I'm going to show you
Ah.
how mine works before you guys keep going. Back to mine. If I refresh the page now, we should see the word loading, and then our stuff loads in. Very nice.
Got it.
Last change we're going to make to this. We're going to go ahead and add in a query option here. I want to allow this thing to change if we ever do a query. And so we're actually going to do, instead of just saying get articles, what we do here is now put a form or a text field and a button that says search. And so we're going to be able to allow the user to actually put in a query. So very, very quick on our articles page. We'll go back to actually, sorry, news, right? Oh, maybe, right? Yeah, we're gonna go back to news for that, don't I? Well, I guess I don't have to. I can put that here. Yeah, screw it. We'll put it inside here. I'm gonna bring in our form component. We import form from common form. Inline input container. Input. And button. Bring in those items there for us. Those are 3 things we're going to bring in. All right.
Yeah, just hold on that for a second.
Yep, I was going to do that. I was going to hold for a second after I did those. I'll also do search it. There we go. That would be enough to allow our system to at least load up the screen. So that should at least update our screen to have this. You want to see that on your screen now. I will go back to things you can type back in. Maybe to figure out why our articles are not centered in the screen. They should be. Nope, I'll do that later. Oh, I think I know why. So EMP display is flex. Flex directions. Like this for the moment. I'll change that. a little bit.
Align content, maybe?
What's that?
Align content, maybe?
No, I know what it is. I need to do 2 things. Display, flex, direction as column, and align content. Not just by content, align items, because I think these are in a row or column. There it goes. Yeah. Fortunately, it did screw up my search bar though. Not sure why. That should be still a row because I did the
Because you're rendering on the same,
inline input container though. Which
you're
should
rendering
be-
on the same div. That's why.
Yeah, but it's still, these should be in a single row, unless the row is too small. Like I said, this is something that happens a lot with dealing with these items. Yeah, look at that. I have too much margin. It's not taking up the whole screen. What did I do? Why is it not taking up the whole thing? So many margins. No, this should be putting it into a row. Display flex, respect content, center. Where's row? It's inheriting. Do I need to update my common component? I think I got the wrong one. I did grab an old one. That should have row in there. Grab an old version of my function. Yeah. No, you're not being friendly to me. Anyway, figure that out later. Again, this is not where I wanted it, but it's fine actually. This actually looks fine. We'll use this, but I'm actually going to go back to what you guys have, so you guys don't worry about that. I will update this later. If I didn't have you guys do that with me, so we'll just do this. It's fine. Back to what you guys had, just like this. This is what you want to see. So if you have this, you're good. All right. And during those 1 hour beginning of class, if there's any, I will include CSS help. If you want to kind of, for the first like half an hour of class, you want to get some help with like styling. If your system just isn't visually lining up right, include that. So once you get to your front end, once you get to front end, don't worry about trying to get to it now. But if you are working on your front end and you're having some display issues, we can definitely try to help out with that as well. So that first hour of class to get help on your stuff. So if you're having trouble getting things to look right or respond right, trust me, getting someone else to help you try to figure out the CSS can be very nice. Trying to figure out CSS on yourself by yourself can be a very big pain in the ass. Any more time needed, or do we have this? Anyone need any help not getting this?
I need help, but I just can't get mine to load. So
All right, let's take a look.
I keep getting this message.
Try npm install.
npm
Says it
install.
can't- Yeah, because it says it can't find those. Oh no, man, hold on. Navbar, and it can't resolve React Router DOM. And that means one of the packages is in your font awesome packages aren't there. So go back to the Visual Studio Code.
Oh, you don't see that, do you?
I do. You got it all loaded. You're good this time. Yeah, for the fun of it, yeah, just kill it and try doing npm install.
Okay, so
And we'll also check your package.json folder file in a second. Let's do that first.
that
When
right?
you download, yeah. So you download something from the GitHub repo, it won't download the packages. You need to do npm install to install the packages. So if you downloaded this from me, the modules aren't downloaded automatically. I think it did. Scroll up a little bit. See if it added any packages. I feel like it did something. Let's see.
Found one moderate.
Vulnerability, yeah. Which is
So
fine.
type to fix it.
Nah. Not gonna worry about that right now. It's moderate, not a big issue. And again, that's just a vulnerability that you need to deal with if you're gonna make this, put this into production.
How about that one? Just looking for. I don't even know what that means.
Several packages are trying to have funding so that they can continue to increase the package. So it's GitHub and Git trying to, or NPM trying to make sure that people who are providing these free packages, people who are aware that, hey, if you like these packages, you can support them by Patreoning them in a way. NPM start.
What's the problem though? He's got one problem there on the problem thing. On the tab.
Vulnerability? Oh, problems.
I think it's
Mhm, right.
never used.
Yeah, don't use those.
Hmm.
Back to terminal.
That's okay. It should be
Yep.
fine.
Don't worry about that.
Yep.
Not actually a problem, it's a warning.
Just want,
NPM
just want to
start.
make sure there was no errors.
Yep. Again, NPM start would have told us that there was.
Hmm.
If this doesn't work, we're going to check his package.json next to make sure that those packages are installed. Promising.
Nope,
Nope,
same
it's
thing.
still not there. All right, let's go back to Visual Studio Code. Can you click on package.json? Scroll down. Package.json right there. Hey, you're missing things. All right. To do the npm install commands of React Router DOM and the FONOS packages. Hold on a second. I will get you the commands. So, kill the application again. Check the Zoom chat for your 3 npm install commands for that, and then one more. And oh, we don't need DOM. Yeah, get rid of that link. We didn't use DOM. We didn't use React Router DOM. Oh, we did. Oh, you use React Router? Yeah, wait, hold on. We use React Router DOM, don't we? Yeah. That one as well. npmi React Router. So copy and paste those items from the Zoom chat.
I
Uh,
don't
Oh, I
I don't
did to
see
waiting room
anything in
participants. Hold on. I'm apparently typing it to the waiting room participants, which does not exist. Everyone. Hey,
Cliff, I
Well, I
can't get
was
my,
waiting.
that one, and then that one.
So can I put them all in at the same time or one by one?
Yep. You can do all, you can definitely do at least the first 3, definitely. You can try all 4. You listen to press enter one
You
extra
can
time.
do all of them, but just don't type npm. Just type like npm install and then that thing.
True, but you can also just copy and paste whole lines. Yeah.
Oh, I hit
I
paste.
can't get
and
my
it didn't-
news to
Yeah,
load.
it's gonna paste them all because they all have new line characters at the end of each one, so it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's gonna install them one at a time. And then while that's going, did someone else have did they had a bug?
I can't get my news to load.
I'll stop
Alright.
sharing so you can look at his for now.
And then yeah, you might need to hit enter one last time for the last one. Just be aware of that.
Okay.
Go ahead, share your screen.
No warning. Oh, one warning. I mean, I don't see any errors.
Yeah, warnings
Well,
are usually fine. A lot of the warnings are just going to be, hey, you have a variable that you're not using.
Don't forget to turn off your camera, Rich, if you're having trouble.
Thank you for that. Sure, that slows me down.
To the one, this is called new provided file, but that should make a difference.
Oh,
Don't worry about that. It should load accurately. That should not cause an issue, actually. That's not important. Just notice that. Use context is white. Oh, I scroll back up. Interesting. The color scheme is weird. Variables are just white. Okay, good to know. Kind of. Yeah, they are. Functions are green, variables are white. Got it.
Did you change line 7 and 8?
Not a new provider now. He's actually
Oh.
a provider right now. That's accurate. Line 4 is good. Scroll down. That looks fine. Can you load up the browser again? Can you
Right, mine
just go
works
to the-
now.
Just go to the home page. Good, Jeff. Nice.
I must have missed that part in the video.
Yeah, just get rid of that. Yeah, hit enter. Now click on news. Interesting. Let's
So
check
it's
your
somewhere
router.
along the router. Router.
So back to Visual Studio Code. Let's go to App Router. Also getting rid of the nav bar, and that shouldn't be happening. Looks right though. Okay, let's do this actually quick before we waste time looking at the code. Back to the browser. I'm doing bad text support right now, which is sorry. This is not actually how I would inspect it. How I would do it. Go ahead and right click and go to inspect. We want to look at the console, which is there. There we go. Scroll a little bit. No, not there, on the console. Yeah, scroll up a little bit. Object is not iteratable. Articles.js line 12. So let's go to articles.js line 12. Scroll up. Most likely, okay, I know what happened here. So I see. It's very subtle, people. I don't know if you noticed that these two need to be changed to curly brackets now. We switched our news provider to provide an object of articles and loading. So now we need to pull them as if they're an object as well. It's a very subtle problem, very subtle mistake, but that is it. What I was saying is that I can't iterate through what use context is returning because use context is returning an object. Objects are not iteratable. Arrays are iteratable. So,
Oh.
Back to it. It's loading. Doing something. Hey, there we go. Boom, you have stuff.
Nice.
All good. Small change.
Oh,
All right.
Thank you.
And like I said, Jeff, you said yours is good now.
Mine, I don't have the search bar part, but I do that after class. Like I said, I can't type and watch, so I
No worries.
watch and then afterwards I do it.
All good then. Anybody else? All right, let's get back to it. We have our search bar here. What our search bar is going to be our query. And again, the query is going to be provided and updated via news provider as well, but not updated. So we're going to add more to our news provider now. So I want to make a nice complex provider for you guys, just so you can see all you can do with it. That was what I really realized I wanted to do. So one more, const query, set query, use state. Empty. Actually, we'll default it as JavaScript. I'll actually default it as JavaScript. Now what I'm going to do is the set news here on line 24, that's just going to use our query. Now note, this is going to give us a squiggly down here. Because we are now utilizing a variable that can change, it's letting us know, hey, by the way, you're utilizing this changing. It has a dependency called query. You're using query either included or removed from the dependency array. So it's letting us know, hey, you might want to add this. You can ignore it, again, if you don't want to change it. But right now, if query was to change, it's not going to pull down new information. So what we're going to do is tell it, hey, monitor query. And if query updates, rerun this. So if I get a new query, change this. Make sense?
So it's set by default to JavaScript.
Right, so we load
And
something.
then if you hit search, it will change it. And then it says,
Doesn't-
oh, it changed. So it reruns.
It will. We haven't coded that yet, but that's the goal. That's the goal. As soon as, yes, set query is run and a new value is given to it, because query changed and how re-rendering works, it will then rerun the use effect and get us new data. Now we need to make sure our articles page will actually do that. So save that. Oh, I also need to pass this. So I also need to send it query and new query. Set query. Blech. Set query. Do that. At least I think I need both. Maybe I don't. We'll see. I definitely need, I know I'm doing query and set query for the moment. I go back to articles now. I can bring those in. There we go. Here's one of the words that always looks wrong. Query and set query. Input here. Just to make sure we utilize it correctly, I'm going to bring up our register form for a second so you can remember how it looked. We did these things. That was wrong. The user form, sorry. So you can see how we do input. So input needs an ID. Placeholder. I'll say that's fine. On change is definitely important. On change, change, if we look at what handle change did E, update form this, but this time we're not doing a complicated object. We're just changing a single value. And so in this case, what we can do is do something a little different. We'll do E, set query, E.target.value. Make sense? So we'll take the event of the change and we're just going to pass the value to set query. U equals makes sense, right? So far.
Wouldn't value equal set query?
So set query is a function.
Oh, okay.
It'll
So that's where
change
I got
query.
them. So the value is actually, well, the variable is query.
Yes, set query is a
Okay,
function that will
that's where I got it.
change query because query is a constant. Remember that.
Okay.
You can't actually change query directly. You only change it through the function.
Wouldn't we want to do the on change in button?
Ooh, thank you, Connor. I was wondering if I'm going to call this out.
Well, I went to go
This-
test it out, and I noticed that as I was typing it in, all the searches got changed. So I was
You
like,
tested it,
oh.
okay. Yes, this is actually not the way we want to do this because as you'll see, as I change this, every time I type a letter, it's now going out to the API system and updating my search. This is going to be horrible for our API.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we want to only update query on the click of button. And what we actually want to do are on the submission of button. So form submission, we want to do this. So what we want to do is actually have a intermediary that articles is monitoring the current state of query and only updating the search query on click or on submission. So I'm going to get rid of all this junk stuff now, by the way, just so we can clean up a little bit, see a little better. So here we're going to do const. We are going to still use state here. We're just going to do q and set q. This is going to be our intermediary query. State empty string. So in this case, we're going to change this to set q. And this is just going to be q. Make sense? And now we're going to need a handle submit that's going to go ahead and update our query. So over here, we're going to do on form, on submit. I'm going to create a handle submit. So right up here, submit. We don't need to do the prevent default because I told you guys that my forms on submit function will do that for you. So you don't need the prevent default. I've already handled that. All we need to do here is do set q equal, set query to q. Make sense? That's all we're gonna do there. That is it. And so on submit. We'll save that. And now let's see what happens. So refresh the page now. We'll see we get our JavaScript stuff. As I type, we'll do Cardano. I know I mentioned that recently. As I'm typing it, nothing changes. But as soon as I click that search button, there's my new code or my new stuff.
Could you go back to
Yes.
the articles for a second, please? Thank you.
No worries. And again, I want to kind of walk through again what is happening here. Do a little maintenance to the code.
Mine's
I will
not working
say-
yet.
All right, 1 second while I state this. So one of the things I did want to say though, I did want to showcase that concept because yes, you could set up a search system now for an internal search that doesn't have a button here that just has an input field that you could search your internal stuff. If you're searching something that's already been pulled down. So if you're searching local information or data that has already been pulled to your local system, you could do a live filtering of data as you type into a search field with how React works. So that is pretty cool. I wanted to showcase that that is something you could do. So if that API call was just to your backend and you don't care about making those multiple calls, you could do that and allow it to do that, which is really, really cool. And have that kind of live update as they type that some systems are known for. Companies that do that tend to be, again, it's all their data. So they're not paying an external API tool for every single API call. It's calls to their own system. So they only pay the bandwidth and they are aware of that. And they'll usually also load a good amount of common data to your system initially. So
After we finish this one part, can we take a small like 5-minute
will,
break?
yes.
Because I want to run to the bathroom, but I
No
kind of
worries.
don't want to miss this part.
we will, because we're going to do breathers. We can do the login system next. All right. So first off, Matt, show your issue.
Sure.
And I got myself a new stress ball.
All right, blue.
My
It's
search
a
button
Goo
just
ball.
my search button just doesn't work, and I'm not sure why yet.
Right. On submit. That's good. You are using the button, the one that I gave you. Good.
Is the sec QUE? Did you actually use the word QUE?
Yeah, I'm following along phonetically, so
That's okay. Just wanted to make
No
sure.
worries.
Just
Yep.
wanted to make sure that we're on the same
that
we
page.
that
can
would
do is-
definitely do it.
What we can do is in the handle submit function, add a console.log hi to it, just to see if that function is running. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So these are a lot of things I'll do. I'll just throw console.logs in so that instead of assuming, hey, this is running, I'll check to make sure it is.
I probably should have checked this before because apparently there's something wrong in here.
Ooh, set query is not a function. Really? It's right there. So let's go ahead and take a look at your news provider. Set query, scroll down to the values. I see it there. Looks correct.
It did an error out up above saying that this is not. Usually has a little squiggly underneath it that says it's
Yeah.
not, but
Scroll back up again. Set query is there. That looks fine. Query set query. Use state. We are using state. Good.
Didn't add query into the square brackets at the end of use effect.
He didn't. So that's part of it.
So that's what I know. That's one of the
Yep,
that
23.
doesn't that cause the update of the
Oh, this has to something has to go here.
Query. Yep.
yeah.
So
Ah.
this is, we need to tell it to monitor the query variables that whenever it changes to rerun the use effect.
Okay.
Good. I'm still wondering what that console are, but maybe that's an artifact. Let's go back to your browser.
Could be. I'll refresh it. Oh yeah, it just went. Yep.
Okay, cool. Let's try Cardano. Search and boom. It's beautiful.
Fantastic.
Good
Thank
catch.
you.
Yep. So again, just to clarify again, what that does is, yeah, that tells the use effect to monitor that variable. And if that variable modifies, go ahead and rerun the use effect. Otherwise, it will not rerun it, even if everything else re-renders. So the idea here, though, is that, yeah, use effect, let me pull this up, news provider. So if articles changes or if loading changes, use effect will not rerun. It will rerun this stuff and it'll re-render all the components that are down there that rely on articles and loading. That's why the articles will actually load when the new articles are pulled, because the re-render occurs but use effect is skipped. All the child components that are reliant on this state will get re-rendered.
So the search button relies heavily on your use effect. Because it won't actually, even though it might have done the search, it's not going to re-render the page to give you your new results.
Correct. Yes, that button
Okay.
only updates query. It's the use effect that then pulls down the new articles based on query. It's all
So that's why
connected.
even though his search, because it wasn't in there, it didn't actually rerun.
Yeah, it didn't actually load the new data. He probably pulled it. No, he didn't actually. Yeah, no, none of this code would have ran on his. He did update the word query, and he did update this version of query as well. It just didn't rerun this code because use effect wasn't monitoring that variable to say, hey, if this changes, rerun this function. If anything else was displaying query, that variable, it would have shown it, but it didn't. So example of that, actually, here we go. So quick example. Right here after the button, but before this, I'm going to go ahead and put in key tag query. This is the full query, not the queue. So this is the full query from our news provider. I'm going to remove query from my use effect. So you can see what his code was doing very, very aggressively. So you can see that. So this, back to my function. So you can see right now it shows Cardano because where it is. When we refresh that, it's showing JavaScript. That's what's down here. I'm going to go ahead and type in Cardano again and hit enter. We see that query updated, but none of this code did. None of this did. So it actually did update that state. And any component that was based on that variable did update. Since this one was based on Cardano on query, this updated. Since none of these actually are based on the query state, they're based on articles. So these blocks are all based on the article state, not the query state. These did not update. So what we do
I think
is
I understand now.
we tell it, hey, monitor query. And if that changes, rerun this whole function.
But
here.
but the query is the one that triggers, the query is the one that triggers this use effect to make it operate.
Once we put this here, once we tell
Yeah.
it to monitor. So yes, the query change then tells this function to re-exist, which tells set loading to trigger. Once set loading triggers, this changes right here. This whole chain here will trigger a re-render for the loading text because there's a component that's based on the loading state. And so it'll say, hey, remove all this and put the loading text back. Get news runs, set articles triggers, updates articles. But of course, even though the virtual DOM says, hey, I have new articles, because right now loading is still false, it doesn't render these items yet immediately because the loading state is still true. It then sees set loading to false. It then notices, hey, we have a component that's based on that. It's now set to false. Go to the opposite side. Hey, that's looking at articles, load all the articles in. So now that I've updated this, if I save it, we now see it updates as needed. And as I change things here to we'll do Bitcoin next, we see everything loads up.
But if you change if you click search, it shouldn't change anything because nothing's changed.
Correct. Yeah, that's a really good thing. So if I hit search again, note that nothing here changes. Because nothing actually changed. Even though the set query changed, what am I looking for? What React will do is note, hey, state didn't actually change. Query, this variable didn't actually change, so I'm not going to run the use effect. Even though I clicked search, this variable, the state did not actually change. And so React is intelligent and won't actually do anything.
As much as I want to know how clicking will redo searches, I have to use the bathroom, so I'm
Yeah,
gonna hold off on that.
I think we're good for the moment. Yeah, you can go to the bathroom. And
But if you change the word, if you change the thing to capital Bitcoin, capital B in Bitcoin, it would, because it's been changed, it should show you the same articles, but it changes only because of the fact that
Yep.
the query did the physical word actually changed in the
before you
query.
go, because I want to let him go, but I want to do one quick cleanup before he goes. That way he can see this, because then we're going to take a 5-minute break. I'm removing the p tag. We note that we don't use query here, so I'm going to remove it from here, and we're going to go ahead and remove it from our provider as well. We don't need to provide the query to our system. We only need to provide the changer. We don't actually use that query variable. So that's it. That's our cleanup. 5-minute break. People can get bathroom, get drinks, do all that fun stuff. I'm going to set a timer and I'll put it on screen. So that way people who are watching the video later can see that, but I'll probably actually just pause the video actually. Hold on. Pause.
Do we have some elevator music while the break's on?
Let's see if they have a 5-minute timer with music.
Yeah.
Calm music. There we go. And then I get to do a new share sound. There you go. Also, I'm going to pause the recording.
I'm here.
Cool. I'm just calling it out. And I think I like the idea of using the music-based timers. We might do 10 minutes moving forward. But yeah, those are nice. That way, if you step away, you can unplug your headphone, have the audio playing. So as soon as you notice that the sound goes away, you can realize, hey, I need to get back. So that's actually a good idea. All right. So the last thing I'm going to do quick today is just to do a simple version of the login system. So a simple form is going to utilize our auth provider. And now we can start logging into existing accounts that I have to always create a new one whenever we want to log in, which would be nice to see. So that'll be another thing that, again, I feel like this will be very useful for every one of you to use on your sites. So. Let's look at login. Instead of doing new user form, I'm going to create a login form. So new file, login form.js. If you look at register in new user form, we notice that all the data was stored in the register system. So register stored it all and passed it into the form system and did all the actions, where the form was just managing the current state of the form. It didn't do any of the logic. So we're going to do a similar concept here. So first, login. React. We'll definitely need the state again. So we do want to have state. Is there anything we need to load from the site when the page loads? We need to pull anything down from the API when the page loads.
Just when we log in.
Mm.
Oh,
When we load the login form, is there anything from the API we need to load in?
No, I don't think so.
From the news
no.
API, no.
Nope.
no.
No, so we don't need use effect. Do we need to send anything to the API in order to get something back?
Yes.
All right, we do need to do that. Which package does that again? Sanity check.
Axios.
Axios is how we send data or ask the system for something else when we want to. Axios is we want to get something, use effect, we want to get something on load or do something on load. Axios, and then we do need the off context as well. We need the off context to be able to access token and stuff, or be able to set the token. What else do we need in order to interact with the context? What do we need?
You need the word from.
That. Not you, Jim. I think you know it. You've answered 2 questions already, I think.
I don't know if I know it or not, but I'll let someone else answer though.
Okay, good. So if I want to utilize the context, what else do I need?
Use navigate.
Close, not use navigate. Does anyone know
Yeah.
use navigate does something
Left
different
out
here.
Rotterdam.
So, not use navigate. Use navigate will let us move the person to another page once they log in. So we probably do want that actually. Once the person logs in, we probably want to move them away from the login page, right? We probably do need that. That doesn't use navigate doesn't allow us to utilize the auth context. If I want to interact with the auth context, what do I need? The hint is the word context.
We have that.
What? So what's inside of the auth context? It's auth and set off, right? And if I want to, I can just do auth context. Is that enough? Or what else do I need? That's not enough,
Need-
right? Go ahead. Oh, thought I heard someone start to say something.
I was thinking a provider, but
Right.
I don't know how to explain, so.
I feel like a lot of you gonna start, you're gonna like kick yourself as soon as I or someone else says what it is. 'Cause I've been trying to not say the word, but yeah, I'm getting close to it. So again, just putting auth context by itself is not enough. I need to utilize auth context. And what do I need? How do I do that?
Use
What is the-
context.
There it is.
Use-
Yeah, use context, right? If I want to use a context, I need to use the use context method. They designed the name to be fairly self-explanatory. So yes, if I bring in a context, in order to use that context, I need the use context hook. So use context. Yeah, there we go. All right, we'll also bring in navigate. So const navigate. Last but not least, let's go ahead and create our state, which is going to be query again for our form.
So you're doing this under login, right?
Yep. An object with username. And password, right? Those are the two fields we need for our login form, correct?
Yes.
Good. Anything else you can think of when you're thinking of a login form? So
Don't you need an
let's-
authenticator? Or that's
what?
what they use. The authenticator is the use auth, right?
Yeah, that's what this is. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. This has the token in it. Yep. Anything else? Let's do a user story concept where we walk through what we think is going to happen when a user uses our system.
So you would need a submit button.
We need a button, yeah. So we probably want to bring in, well, again, that's gonna be part of the form. So we're not gonna bring that in here. We have our login form file for that. So we are gonna need a button though. What should happen when I click the button now?
It's gonna have to query. It's gonna have to actually go and check to see if those credentials
Oh.
exist.
True, and is that an instantaneous item?
It should be.
Well, it's gonna be pretty fast, but not guaranteed to be instantaneous, is it?
Shouldn't it actually be as soon
Loading?
as you? Well, actually, yeah, loading probably. You'd see a loading screen while you're trying
Once
to wait for it to load.
Loading and confirmation after that if
Yes.
there's nothing that correlates with the database.
There's two things we can benefit from this that I'll give you guys for this one. So I'm going to get a little more fancy with this one, and later on I might update the other form as well, but not really. We're going to do const. This is where you can do either loading or submitting. I like this one better for this because it makes more sense to me. Submitting, set submitting. Loading to me sounds like I'm getting information. Submitting tells me that I'm submitting information and it's still submitting or not submitting, right? So is there any real difference between the two in as far as JavaScript's concerned? No, they're just Booleans. This for me is more just my sanity. By default, this will be false, and that's supposed to be use state, not set state. There we go. And the last one we can do is const errors. Errors is usually an object of errors with a key, and that can identify if the error should be displayed or not. It's a very common practice to do this. Is this the only way of doing it? No, you can just do a simple string. But this is very commonly how you'll see errors. Errors is usually an object, which is exactly the same thing we get back from most APIs. You get an object with like message in there or something like that. So it's very common that errors is an object with keys that help to differentiate the error types or where the error is from. So we could actually, if we wanted to be specific, and if our backend was specific, we could say that there was an error with the username or the password specifically, or with the whole thing in general. So that's the way to keep in mind of that. We probably still won't use this ourselves, but just be aware this is a very common thing to have, so that you can capture errors and then display it. And so then you can do a ternary expression saying that if errors dot a certain key exists, display. If no errors, don't display. I do remember us not doing anything very specific here, so maybe not on this one. We might need, it might be better on the registration sheet, but yeah, for this one, because I don't think on any of them we did any sort of like data validation. So this is not going to be useful in our current application because we didn't do any validation on our backend. Maybe if we have time, we might do some backend validation just so you can see how this looks like, but this is a common practice.
So you would still need the inputs in order to take the information in as well.
Like this? Me.
Okay, I don't know why I didn't notice that.
Okay, just checking. Okay. No worries.
I've been up since 6. I think I'm starting to get tired.
No worries. What time are we at anyway? I think we have enough time for this. I think we can squeeze it in. So we have this. Like we did last time, a very common item to have is our const update form. Update form is a simple function that just takes a field to update and the value to update it to.
Do we have some like slight validation for the back end, like it knows if it's like a user already exists, right?
True, but yeah, I don't know. So yeah.
I mean, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Did we actually send that back in a nice way? I don't know. I'll have to take a look at it later.
Okay.
Again, I don't know if we have enough time to do all of that today. We might do that again one of the other next classes, but we'll see what we can do.
But can you have React just feedback what Java gives back as a
Probably, but like I said,
as a web address or like 500 or whatever?
probably, but again, not going to deal with that today. Probably may do that
Okay.
tomorrow or next time. I
All
want to just make sure we can log in right now. Again, code first, expecting correct functionality, expecting the user to always be correct. That they're always going to get validated and only ever going to log into an existing account. After that successfully works, then go ahead and start handling, okay, well, now let's see if someone tries to log in to an account that doesn't exist or enters an incorrect password. What do I want to show? And then handle that. Because you never want to try to handle both at the same time. And then if it doesn't work, you don't know which part of it doesn't work. If I code this in a way that if a user logs into an existing account and enters the correct username and correct password, they log in successfully. And then I start adding in some errors and it stops working, then I know something wrong with that there's something wrong with my validation, and I can always undo back to that working point of where it was working to log in successfully. Always code as if you're going to get perfect users first, add in your error checking and validation second. That makes sense? Try to do both at the same time, I guarantee you're going to pull your damn hair out. Because I did that with one of the sites we were working on, me and Arnell, one of our clients, and just so many people started running into errors because our error checking was not clean, and I wasn't getting good error messages back. And so since I tried to do all the data validation right from the get-go, it was not clean, it was not pretty, because I could not fathom all the ways a user could be bad and type in incorrect data. I thought I could not. People are fascinating with what they will try to type into things, thinking that they're typing it in right. So just be aware of that. Add in your validation later. Add in what you know people will type in wrong, or handle the most common situations, and as new situations arise, handle them there. That's why catch-alls and defaults are very, very helpful. Just give a generic error to the people, then you can check on it later and add the more specific information later. Anyway, so update form, like I said, just takes a field and value, we do set query. And again, just remember what happens is whenever we do this, because we need to we're always going to be overwriting whatever's here. So query, again, a static item, even though it's an object, we are going to be overwriting query and creating a brand new version of it every time we do set query. So we need to give it the new version, but also keep any of the existing information as well. And how we do that is we first take the deconstruct the original using the triple dot or the spread operator. This is called the spread operator. So we spread the original object and then add in the new item. And we can do this by doing bracket notation, which is common to objects, equals value. So all this stuff is again, this is just more fancy versions of the basic stuff that we had before, basic concepts. This is definitely new. I don't expect anyone to know about this thing. This is very useful. Again, it just takes it and just pulls it apart, takes out all the contents into its new thing here. And this, again, this isn't really new. It's just we never did it before inside of a new object using bracket notation to get to identify a dynamic key. So this way, the key here is also dynamic. We're not setting any sort of specific key. We're just saying key from this item, which is a string, and that's the key. And then there's our value. All right. Last thing we need for any form is an on submit. All I'm going to do here is just do a comment for now. Oh, const. We can do that later, but we at least put the comment there and know we need it. After that, we'll go ahead and build our form, honestly. But before we do that, let's just copy this up so we get that div. I really need to make the container. I highly recommend to you guys to make this container, but I'm just gonna grab it for now. That. That. Oh, Jesus, what did I just do? That's where we're starting. What I'm going to do next, though, is going to now create our login form. Keep an eye on it. We'll also use our user form on the right-hand side as well. That as well as we also hide that. We're going to use this. So import, again, our defaults. Let's start with the basics. React from React. Const login form. Props. And this is just, again, how I do a lot of these. Even though I can look to the right and see a bunch of stuff, I'm just going to do a basic empty component to start. I know this is a form, so I'm going to start with form. I didn't import. For some reason, it did not import it this time, so let's do it myself. All right, that's it. Now do the export. A lot of them, again, I didn't do that with this one because we already had some basic stuff on the login screen, so I didn't need this. But whenever I do a new component, I always start with this, the basics. Because I don't remember, I don't forget, I couldn't count the number of times I forget to do this. I cannot count the number of times I will forget the return statement and just try to return something like this, just without the return statement surrounding it. I'll forget that constantly. So I always start any React component with React, the name of the item, props, return a single component, whether it's an H1 tag, or if I know it's going to be a certain component, the common component that I've used, I will just bring that one in with nothing in the center and then export it. And then I can add stuff. As long as I know I have these items, I've covered a lot of the most common forgetful items because they're so common. By the time you finish what you're doing, you think you did them already. Because this is so repetitive, it's very easy to think you've done it already and you haven't not done it. Because we'll constantly, more often than not, you're going to be editing an existing component, not creating new ones. And so a lot of times you'll be working in a component and not have to add this because it already exists. So it's very easy to forget to do this. Same thing with the return statement. More often than not, you're going to be modifying an existing component. So you're not going to be typing the return statement. You just be adding components or adding JSX to an existing component or adding more code to an existing component. And so you won't need to type this. So you're just going to assume you already have it. So that's why I always start like this. This is my basic way of starting any component I start with. Then I add the extra stuff. So now that I know I'm doing a form, if I think for 2 seconds, what are the, if I think about it about a login form, what are the items I need? We'll start with just the fields or the pieces of a form, not the common components that we have in our system. What are the 2 common items I need for a login form?
You're gonna need the username and the password.
True, those are the items. I'm sorry, I meant the form elements.
You're gonna need inputs.
Yeah, an input, need an input
Gonna need a button.
and a button. Yep. Once I do those, then I think about what are the things I need for my forms in my React app. And there's one item we need, which is what? Does anyone remember what it's called? Make my sure my forms look good. What's that?
Was it
The,
Axios? Or is that for the APIs?
No,
Access
he's
to the
gonna,
API.
you
Okay.
wouldn't you need that inline input container?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily needed, but it is, again, I use it again.
It's a-
I give it to you guys for, again, display purposes to make it look good. This makes a very nice looking form for you guys. So again, you can utilize my input component, my button component, my form component, and my inline input container. So you have nice looking forms right from the get-go. Are they the best looking forms? No. But at least modern looking compared to what you start off with just using the default HTML tags, 100%. And that's what I'm trying to save you guys time for. And you guys are not, again, you're not trying to be front-end developers, so I don't want you wasting too much time trying to build your own original stuff that looks good.
Nathan is.
True, if he wants to go for it, go for it. But I'm talking in general. Chad, you can check on how that's going. Anyway.
I may
So-
or may not.
I
He can neither confirm nor deny.
like it. There you go. So
The
a
answer is
form again.
42.
with our form, we're going to go ahead and take our new user form as reference. We see we have a handle change and a handle submit helper method that just makes it so that our JSX code is not so large. That's all these do, is just make sure that our JSX code is fairly small. So we'll do a const handle change, and we'll also do what we see here. We see that this nice little deconstruction of our prop system, but I'm going to show you a different version of this. So you see it here. I'm also going to show you a different version here. So instead of deconstructing it outside, I'm just going to deconstruct it here. Doing query form on submit. And so what this does is it takes that prop variable that would be here, which is what the first thing is. The first thing sent to a component is the props variable. And I'm just instantaneously deconstructing that prop component right away as soon as I get it to these 3 items. And I no longer have a prop variable at all. I just have these 3 instead. So there's no props variable, just the items I extract. I just want to show you this because you will see this in some components. You might look at examples. So I want you to see the 2 different variations. I can have props and then pull out the things I want, but I can also just pull them out right away, right in here. Because I think one of my common components does this. So if you do look through some of my common components, you will see this syntax, and I want to make sure you understand what it's doing. It's just this line done here. All right. Handle change. Part of the reason why I show you these items is because I'm trying to save you from those moments of confusion when I first saw something like this and had no idea what was going on. I saw something like this when I was looking at examples of React components. I'm like, what? And it took me a little while to realize, oh, they're just deconstructing the props component right away, or the props attribute right away, instead of doing it on a separate line. I just want to expose you guys to these things now so that hopefully you'll save some confusion later. Use the one, though, that makes more sense to you in your code. I'm just trying to provide you multiple examples. So the one that makes more sense. If this makes more sense to you, use it. If this makes more sense to you, use this. Use the one that makes most sense to you. I just want to make sure you see the multiple variations. If you see it, like, this is familiar, let me go check my previous code to see why I recognize this, and see and try to hopefully remember what Cliff said about this. That's my goal. Handle change. Update form. E.target value e dot target. Okay, that was ID and value. Whoopsie. Handle submit. We'll simply just run our on submit method that was passed to us. I can't hit the equal sign for some reason. And all these are doing is simplifying our code down here so we don't have to write out this here in here. So it's making sure that our JSX stays nice and simple because it's already pretty wordy as is. So we're just trying to remove some of the wordiness up here. That's all. All right, so form. If we take a look at what we got here, we're just going to use this as well. So form submit. We're going to do the handle submit method. And we'll bring in the same styling just for the fun of it, because it's good, it's useful. Next with 100. Yes. Good. If you think about it, we just need the two inline input containers of really this kind right here, if you think about it. We use this one for the email and this one for the password, right? So these two right here is really all we need. Right? Does these look good to you? What do you guys think?
Sure, why not? Go for it.
We know
What do we
DB
got to
input
do?
line container.
We
Again,
got
we
to
do DB input
debugging it.
inline input container. That doesn't require anything. We have the username. So ID username, is that the same name we put inside of our state from the login screen? Do you remember the two keys we used? Email and password or username and password? Which one was it?
Username and password.
So this makes sense. We do want the username is an email account as far as what we did clarify that for our users. Their username is their email account. The type is, of course, going to be email. We want to make sure they're entering an email account. We want to use the handle change method. And the value is going to be query.username. So this is exactly what we want. So at least know we want this. Do we want the input and the password to be on the same line or on separate lines?
Well, separate lines is kind of like what normal.
That'll be normal.
Yeah.
I like that. So we'll do another one here. With the input, again, we did use the term password. We do want the placeholder to be password. Type password, so we get the masking dots. So then that's what this does. If we don't put type password here, the password will display as they type it. By putting type as password, as they type it, you'll get the nice little stars or dots, whatever the browser chooses to use. Handle change and value password is correct as well. And that's not what I wanted. That'll help. So I can see that. Nice. That cheat. That worked. What else do we need?
Guess the button will be the bottom.
Yeah. Anything fancy about the button?
Yeah, you could put submit, put login, you could put sign up, you can sign in.
What do you guys want to use? Login, sign in, register, submit. What do you want to use?
Log in, and it's one word.
That it is. Yeah, if you look down, you'll see nothing fancy about it. No extra stuff here because again, it's the form that gets submitted. The button submits the form. The button doesn't actually do anything itself. It just triggers a submit action to the form on HTML. That's how HTML works. So always be aware of that. The button is very, very simple. You just use the button to submit the form. And that's why we have the on submit on the form tag, not in the button. It's very easy to goof up sometimes, and I'll forget that sometimes myself. That looks to be it for our form, right? Cool. Let's bring that into login. So over here, we'll go ahead and do import login form. We'll just go ahead and do login form. We do need to send it though. Query, update form, and on submit. So query, that is going to be just query. Good. We look back up. Yep. Query. We need to also give it not navigate. We don't need navigate. We don't need off. We need an update form, which is which method again? What's the name of the update form method?
Update 4.
Good. Yeah. I want people other than Jim answering. People, come on.
I
Make sure you guys
I looked at that up
awake.
there. Wait a second, is that what it is? Oh, yeah, that must be it. Yeah.
100% a trick question there. See if you guys are awake and paying attention. Half the time, a lot of my questions just look back through the code. 100%. I'm just trying to get you guys to reread the code sometimes, just scan better through the code to see if you can understand what's there. So a lot of times my questions are not to confuse you guys. So on submit. So just putting the same ones. So got those in there. Is there anything here that we wanted to include but isn't included but not including yet?
We got the navigate still.
Yeah, navigate's going to be part of this though. When we do the on submit, when we log in, when they successfully log in, we're going to want to navigate them away from the login screen, right?
Right, yeah, that will move, yeah,
So,
push them on to the
Yeah,
next
that doesn't
step.
need to go to the form.
Hmm.
Auth and set off doesn't need to go to the form. Oh, wait, submitting and set submitting. We do want that to go to the form, right? Potentially. When we submit, what do we want? How do we want the screen to change? So
You want it to actually show them as logged in now. So actually in the corner where it says logged in, it should say their name, their profile, or something like
nice, yeah.
that. That lets them know that they're logged in as opposed to it staying the same.
True, but that wouldn't be a part of this function, this component. So yeah, that's something we can definitely add to the nav bar, 100%.
We said how would it change?
Might do that here, but I'm wondering how would the component change? Oh yeah, I did ask how the screen would change. Good point. You got me there. Well put. All right, I'll give you that one. Touche. Well, I will surrender that one. You got me on that. I did ask that, and you did answer it. So we have login. We have 1 bar, 2 bar, and then the button. You know, that's not really accurate to scale. At and star, 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 star. And then over here we have with a button. Okay, I guess we do have a nav bar. So when I click this, what do I want to see on the screen to know that it's attempting to log me in?
You should see a loading, that little loading wheel. I think it's
Yeah,
Spinner. We do
or
want,
loading,
yeah.
spinner
But
or
where do
loading.
we want to hide all of this? Do we want it to do like this with the spinner, or do we want something less impressive? What is a
Can
common?
you just
doing
make the text on the button
Ooh, the
like-
button, all right?
loading?
Could they change the button? Can I change the button? Well, let's go here to my comment item and see what I gave you.
Login.
Look what I gave you guys.
a loading
Oops.
button.
Dot disabled. If the item is marked as disabled, it will show the text loading. I gave you guys a nice little loading button. I also gave you a file button that has a spinner as well. So if you do the props disable as true, it will display a spinner. So if you have the awesome package installed on your system, you can use the file button and get a spinner when it's disabled. But if you use the normal button, which we're currently using, you'll just get the loading text. Do we want to use, which one do we want to use, the spinner or the loading text?
Seeing as though you already used the regular one, you should probably try out the file one.
Let's do it then. So let's switch this over. Let's import file button from the file common. File button.
Less common.
We'll switch these over. So, oops, wrong button. That one.
Yeah, gotta change file comment to a capital C.
Did I do that?
Oh, I don't know. if
Yeah,
you-
I did. You're right.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Good call.
As soon as it,
I did do
okay.
that. You're right. I double checked. I didn't think I did. I didn't realize I did. You're right. I see it right there. Cool. So file button. And what we'll do is we're gonna give it the disabled prop. So when is the button disabled?
It's disabled until you hit login.
Which means disabled until it's submitting.
Yes,
So if when submitting
submit event.
is true, the button should be disabled. Why is it yelling at me?
Did you bring in submitting
I
yet?
didn't. Oh, yeah, I didn't bring it in. So that's something I do need to send. Yep. So over here in our up here, we're gonna then do also after query, we'll do query submitting, comma update form on submit and on submit.
So on line 7, when you're doing query, then submitting, is that, there's a
props.
hierarchy to that? You have to actually
No.
put them in order?
Not at all. They're
Okay.
they're like an object. So I just like doing functions at the end and data up front. It's a common
okay.
format you'll see. So data up front, functions at the end.
Could you scroll down to the button for a second, please?
Yep.
Party in the front, business in the back.
Yeah. Again, for me, it's just organized. You'll actually see some people even try to put a like data in front with functions at the back, and then also alphabetical order with those items as well. Well, they'll try to alphabetize them if the order doesn't matter, because they're just keys in an object.
Too OCD for me.
Yup, I agree.
Is that all you changed? Just added the disabled to
And again, we
FA
switched to
button
FA
and-
button. Yeah.
Right. Yep.
And
then
fog
just
common at the top.
And the import command as well. Don't forget that. Line 4.
Oh, yep. All right. I'm all caught up then. Thank you.
Cool. So with that being that our login form is updated, let's go back to our login component. Use provider, not save. Save that just in case. Anyway, back to here, we can now make sure we pass submitting in. So since it's getting long, I'm going to do these as multiple lines now. And just prove a point that I don't need to put them in order. Not bad. Submitting. They don't need to be in order because it's the key value type pair. So these are keys and the value. So it's kind of like an object. I'm accessing them via their key. So I will say though, that in here, this must match the item here. That's key. All right, well that did. Now we're good to at least make sure it renders. This isn't gonna work yet because the on submit doesn't do anything. We can at least check to see if the page loads. So we'll save everything, make sure our form and login screen is saved. We head over to our screen and click on login. We should have a nice form. I probably could change the form's width, but
I have a minor problem. My button's not buttoning.
my button isn't doing anything either, but
No, it's not a button. It's just text.
show your screen.
Sure.
I do remember you had issues with loading my stuff. I wonder if you still have a bad component and you have to copy all the stuff from my file component. File button. Yeah, that does not look like a button at all. IntelliJ.
VS Code, but yeah.
Yeah, dang it. Can you click on the file button?
Can I click
Oh,
on
no,
it?
capital F, capital F.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Yep, all components should be capital or class styling.
I'm surprised they
let's
didn't scream
go
at
back
me
to the
for
top.
that. There it
Oh,
is.
there it goes. Okay, cool.
I'm surprised
There
they
you
didn't
go.
yell at me
Yeah, I'm
for
surprised
that.
at that. Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't yell at you either. Anyone
I would
else?
have preferred that.
You probably just try to pass it along as
Yeah.
a paragraph text. That's why I just showed the text.
All right. Well, yeah, it just saw, I don't know why it still loaded it. Actually, never mind. Anybody else? Drink. Share screen.
I think if it doesn't recognize the tag, it just like ignores it and just continues.
Apparently, or just treats it as a div. One of the treats it as a name as a div, because you can have divs that are just whatever name. As long as you use a name that is not already existing as a tag, it's treated like a div. It's really interesting for HTML to do that. But whatever.
Like a fragment?
Yeah. No. Fragment displays nothing. There is no tag. A div is still a div.
Oh,
It's just
okay.
a div with a different name. Kind of like you can actually have HTML tags called like start and end now, and they actually don't do anything different as a div does. It's interesting. Not important though. So I think you just have stuff tags now. Anyway, so yeah, got that. Blah blah blah. Let's go ahead and create our on submit then to make sure it actually works. So using our register as reference, you can see that on our on submit, we want to first validate that we actually have stuff we want before we even send it to our backend. So we can do that here if we want. We can do some quick validation of just saying, hey, do I have a username and do I have a password?
Oh, wait, yes,
Could
it's
do
true. Our login page doesn't have 2 passwords to confirm.
Which we don't. So we don't need this. So we don't need to do that. But I guess we can just, yeah, we can just do data equals query, then just send the query, honestly, right? We have a password, username and password, and if they leave it blank, who cares? Do we put these as required actually? Oh, we did,
No.
didn't we? We're not. We could.
You should.
Oh no, it is required because of type email. A blank is not a valid email. So this
Ah,
is by default technically required, I think. Yeah.
what about password?
Oh no, you're right. It isn't. It will let me click the submit and login button without anything. So I do need to put required. Yeah, spell right.
Hmm.
Weird. Right. That. There we go. Now if it's something there we go. Yep, it will say that. So that.
Is there a way for you to put the red asterisks in there in this form or no?
I did not put that in
No,
my
I just asked if
system.
there's a way. You don't have to do it here.
Yeah, I'm just
It's
saying.
that's is there.
Did I do that? Hold on. Put that. I did do required here. No, I did not put a star on it. No, there's no.
Oh,
way-
so
I
that's
did
a
not add star.
CSS thing. I thought it showed up that way as long as it got marked as required.
Nope.
Okay.
That is
So
something you
that's
would have to
actually a
add.
CSS
You
thing.
could put something after this on the input form item yourself, or put it in here on the login form. You could put it after this as well, because again, inline input container will make sure these line up. So if you did put a star here and just span it as red, it would work. So I could do like that. Span. I'm not going to do a lot of it, just. Font color didn't work. That was it. Oh, just color. Just forget that. It's the weirdest one. There you go. You can do that. But then, of course, this is where the slight problem I have is that then this one gets shrunk compared to this one. I didn't like it. So I just never included the asterisk. I just told people later. Or one thing I did is I added a border color to some of these, I think, on ours. So yeah, I think I put a border around those that are required. Anyway. There's multiple
Can I
ways
ask a
to
question?
trigger that. Go for it.
Would it not make more sense for us to, I did user interface. Would it not make more sense to put the login and the form on the same page? The
Sorry, what?
sign up and the login, should they not be on the same page?
They can be, but this was simple to make sure I explained things good and also had 2 ways of showcasing similar stuff.
Well, I was asking, should they be? Like, is there an issue if you were to put them on the same page? Would they interfere with each other?
Not necessarily. Where I could see a problem is just people filling out the whole form every time they want to log in. Users, unfortunately, are very weird. And can also just make your life a little more difficult. You could make it where there's a simple button of login or register. When they click register, the form, you can then display the other component. Have it just a toggle state that says login or sign up. When they click sign up, it changes the form, and this button will change to register, and then the other button, the sign up button, will change to login. When they click that again, it'll switch back to this form. Because one of the things I do notice is if you give people forms, there's a lot of people that only fill out what they need. But then there's other people that if they see a form, they're going to fill out every single field every single time. And that can just be annoying. And then people can be annoyed with your site thinking they have to fill out the whole form when they don't. So that's usually why a lot of times you'll see a login screen that says username, password with the login thing, or click here to sign up. Or they'll always show the register form and say, or click here to log in. And then they'll show a separate form. Very rarely do you have the 2 forms here with just the 2 buttons, register or login, because so many people will commonly hit the wrong button or feel like they have to fill out everything. People are annoying when it comes to being a developer. But yeah, there a lot of times though you would put a link here to switch to sign up instead of having two separate pages like this. You would just have login / sign up. You'll show the login screen and then say login or sign up. Click sign up. Go to the sign up screen.
I just
And
didn't
we'll
know
go
if there
back.
was a way, if it was a problem for information passing for them to be on the same page.
Not at all. I think we showed this before with our previous one that we can send the whole data to our backend and it will only care about the keys it wants. So we sent this entire key with this entire object plus name to our backend on each of the 3 calls. So on this call here, we sent this entire item, but on register, the only thing it cares about is username and password to be able to create the account. That's all it cared about. It didn't care about confirm, didn't care about cohort, didn't care about first name, didn't care about last name. And it then created the user account. When we then sent again to our login system, again, it only cared about username and password and logged the person in. We did the create developer, it sent again everything, but that thing didn't care about password or confirm. It only cared about username, cohort, and name. It actually ignored the first name and last name. So you can send extra data to your API. Your API is only going to care about the keys it wants for that route.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah, no, it's just gonna, the problem can just be with the user and user experience. But yeah, your backend's not going to care. You can send a giant collection of data and it won't care.
I meant more of React because of the fact that it's constantly updating the information. I didn't know if
No.
it mattered if I was trying to put the same on the same page.
Nope. It'll just
I'm
treat
trying
it
to
as the same.
minimize the amount of pages that I have, so.
You know, it won't care. React won't
Okay.
care. It just has forms and an object that it manages. That's it. And personally for you, you don't worry too much about that because again, if the user starts seeing bad performance, you can just blame their computer for not being powerful enough.
I would blame the user for not being smart enough, but
That too.
that's fine.
Yeah. But no, yeah, as long as it's, you know, you should be fine with that. Again, that the only thing I can just see is just users being weird, being annoying and bothering you. Why are all these fields here when I'm just trying to log in? I don't need to fill these out. Like you don't actually. So React won't care. The users will. Yeah, React won't care. So got that. Yeah, we log in. So let's go to the login now. Cool. On submit. We don't need to validate. We're just going to send the data we have. Where is my login? That's not login. Where'd login go? There it is. So we're just going to send that data. So we do need to send it. So we are going to do Axios. So let's go ahead and do that. If you look here, we can notice quick on submit is a asynchronous call because we are going to do an Axios call. So let's just add our async. We did bring in the E last time because we thought we might need it, but then we realized if you look here, we actually did not use it. So we're not going to do it here. I'm not going to delete it because in case you guys don't have this open, I don't want you guys panicking to go remove it. So not going to remove it, but you could. We're just going to do here, do try. And catch log, not log, error. Message. Response.message, sorry. Data.message, which that should be from our backend. We'll also alert it too. Here, we'll go ahead and do a response equals await post, or what was it? To log in, what was our route? Anyone remember?
That's a post.
Post, and what's the post what? What's the URL?
API/developers.
To log in?
Oh, sorry, no, auth. Excuse me. API auth. Crap.
I'm trying to look at mine right now.
Sign up or sign in.
Sign in. It's the exact same item we did here on the right, just sign in instead of sign up. So I'm just going to take this line right here, bring that over. Well, maybe not. I'll just take this line actually. from there, from the post, copy, paste, too many dots. And then so sign up to sign in, and instead of data, we'll do query. That-
I'm just curious, line 31 and 32 I know you should come back as response, but does it come back as, don't you use the res and not response? Is that?
No, because again, this is a
Variable?
response object from the error system. So this is
Oh,
Axios
okay.
responding
Alright.
with an error from the back end. So,
All right,
yeah.
because sometimes I get the,
When it catches, this never finishes. This line fails, and so it won't do the assignment. The
oh, okay,
assignment only happens if this evaluates successfully. If this does not evaluate successfully and crashes, the catch triggers, creates error. It doesn't actually create, so response never gets anything.
okay. I just because I think I'm
No,
thinking
good question.
of the then because you do
Yeah.
then and res you usually
Mhm.
you carry that through, but okay.
Even then, last
Yeah.
thing to keep in mind, response here or res here is also scoped to these two brackets because of how it constructs
Oh,
with
yeah.
JavaScript. So
Hmm,
rest
okay.
doesn't even exist down here.
All right.
Yep. No, great question.
Hmm.
Response there. And so if we get a response back, we should have a token, right? If we remember back to our Axios calls, or not Axios calls, our Postman calls, right?
Hmm.
I didn't think I did Cliff 20 yesterday, so we should log in as that.
Could you remember your password?
Sign in was a post request. Body, raw, JSON, name, and I do double quotes. Me at I hope I did test.com. Password. I'm fairly confident I did test.
Might have done test
Yeah, I
20.
did. What
Yeah.
was it?
I was gonna suggest if it was wrong, it might have been test 20
Not true.
with the numer.
That looks good to me. So I got token ID, username, and my role. Good. So I want token. I would say for those of you who do want to put role-based or secured routes on your system, you do probably want to store the role in your auth provider as well. So you can then test that to see whether or not certain links or things should be shown to the end user. So this is something if you are doing roles in your site, this is something you do want to store in your auth provider, so then you can then decide whether or not to show certain things. But we'll talk about that in a second. Note here though, I know one of you mentioned we might want to show names. Note here, I don't actually have the name, so I can't actually show that, unfortunately. I could show their username. We could also go maybe tomorrow or on Monday, we will update this to showcase to actually send down the name, but we don't have that currently. So just be aware of that. We could also do it where we send this token. We could add a second part of this login to actually ask the system for the name, because we do get it from our register system. We do get it from register because we have it when they filled out their name. But for our login, our backend doesn't send that down currently. We could update it to do that, so we can get the name of the person, or at least load in their profile so we can get their profile data too. Currently don't have that though, so just be aware of it. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to test this again, to see what data we get, to see what we can save. But for the moment, we're just going to save the token. And if we look back at our auth provider, we did prep it to capture the name, but we don't pull that yet. So just be aware of that. For the moment, we're just going to go ahead and do set auth and object auth comma token equals rest data type. That's how we access the data. So always be aware, your item, your content is always stored in data. So what you see here, this is considered data. This object right here is considered data. So just be aware of that. REST has other information that is there. So other response data like headers, response content, And part of the way I can show that is right over here in the browser. If we go back here,
So, yeah, go to the browser. 'cause it does show
network.
Peter in there.
and go back to, where is that thing? We pull down the, that's not right. Hold on. Where are you? No, there it is. Well, this one, if you see response, we get all that. So we do get the item we want. That's not what I want to click on. To get all this, but if I go to headers, we see that there is response headers. And so there's also this data here that's there as well. So we get all this response headers too. So response has more than just this content. This is called the data. This is response data. Sound good? Important to know that. Anyway, we got that. And then last thing we also want to do here is to do a right here on set submitting to true. Both of these we do want to set submitting to false. We are done, even though we failed, we did finish submitting, so we do want to let them try again. Same here, set submitting to false. And we're also going to navigate to developers again. So we can see that we will see that we successfully go to developers and pull down data. This is our way of confirming that we logged in. All right, let's do that quick. Let's see if this works. We'll save. I don't know why I need to save login form. Make sure all your files are saved. Always do that quick. I always see when I forget to save something and things don't work. And again, the way I check to quick, just make sure I saved, is just scan for those dots. So let me show it. I put enter key here.
Also, he
Let's go
also,
through. There's your dot there on login form. If you see the dots, it's not saved.
there's also a save all where you can do is just do save all and you can just continue
Oh,
on.
there is. Cool.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
Could you go back to where we put in the navigate, please?
Of course. Under login. Where was that? Right there.
Oh, / developers. Got it. Thank you.
Just the route we want to send them to. Yep. Save everything. Let's go back to our system. I'm going to refresh because I did a lot of changes. Go ahead and do 20 at test.com. I'll go ahead and enter an incorrect password first just to see that alert. So login. So our backend isn't sending a message as to why it failed. So we're not getting back an object with a message. That's why we're getting undefined. We are getting an empty object. So error.response.data is empty. That's why we're getting undefined, or at least we have error.response.data. The key there is not message. So whatever's coming back isn't here. So just be aware of that. We would have to check later to see where the error message is coming from. So you have to sign in here. Click on that. You see that response. Yeah, response. There's nothing in response. So we're not sending back any sort of content to our failure.
What's the first sign in there? What's that one?
I don't know.
Fail response.
There. Okay. Oh wait, that one actually has stuff, but
You got a timestamp there.
unauthorized path. But yeah, no message. I guess it just wasn't displaying it because I still had the pop-up open. Got it. So once I clicked, it was able to load this. It paused the screen. Got it.
That's cool because you can actually take this apart and actually display it. Because
We would do error. We would do dot error dot message. So
Yeah.
if I want to do a quick change here, I believe I did error dot data dot error. That should get me on the term unauthorized. So refresh.
Uh-oh.
Don't like the idea of, oh no. Unauthorized. There we go.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, mine's
And
not working.
Looked successful. It was. I don't know when my navigate didn't work. I'll check on that.
To get your token.
I got a token.
Hmm.
Why didn't I Why didn't I navigate? And the submitting got changed to false. And I did get logged in because my nav bar changed. I just don't know why the navigate didn't happen. Yeah, see, I'm logged in. Check on that in a second. All right, Matt, what's going on?
It is getting hung here for some reason.
E dot response is undefined. So that means there's an error in your blah, 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 blah. Means an error in your JavaScript because you're not actually getting it. The thing that's failing is not Axios. The thing
Yeah.
that's failing is your code. So we're going to go, instead of doing e dot response, we're going to just do e dot message.
That's right here.
Yep. So get rid of everything, get rid of response and data. Yep.
Okay.
There is a more complex error message reporting system where you check to see it. You do e dot response. If that exists, you do the rest. But if not, you just do e dot message.
Invalid hook call.
Line 32. Let's go look. That could just be
Oh.
the console log though.
Yeah, that's the
Let's see. Set off. Set submitting. Scroll up a little bit. Set off. Use context. Off context. Good. Set submitting. You did that. Use state. State. Good. Oh wait, hold on. React hook use effectiveness dependency off token. That shouldn't make a difference.
30.
That doesn't matter actually.
What's with the quote marks on line 9
9.
in username and password?
Oh, just blank.
Oh,
Just
okay,
empty
sorry.
strings.
Can't
Empty
see.
string. Yeah, or yeah. They're single quotes, 2 single quotes. Those are fine. Back to the error message, please.
Sure.
Invalid hook call. Connection, just to double check, refresh the screen, try again.
Sure.
I have to make sure that's an accurate error. Just forgot that just popped up and we're just assuming that's the message. Okay, good. Just want to check. But why isn't it telling the call which one it is? You might have mismatching versions of React in the renderer, such as React DOM. You might be breaking the rules of hooks, which I don't think you are. You might have more than one copy of React in the same app, which would be weird. Invalid hook call. Hook can only be called as a body of the function component, which is what you're doing. Back to your function again.
Sure.
Weird. Oh, use navigate needs to be has parentheses.
Where's that?
Line 12.
Oh,
Use navigate. Yep. Which I didn't do. That's why mine's not working. I think. Hold on. Let me check that. I feel like that might be my problem too.
oh.
Yep,
Weird, you didn't
that's
get
it.
an error message like he did, though.
I didn't, but I probably just didn't check. It's probably more wrong to his than too, but that's one thing that's a problem. Surprised mine didn't give an error then. Yeah, because I had the same thing, but that's probably why I didn't navigate. But I wonder if you did log in. Go ahead and back to your code again. That is a
Yep.
hook, so that's why I'm wondering if that's part of it.
Hey,
Hey, there it is. So yeah,
Hey.
it was working. It just you were getting the same thing. You probably just weren't displaying the results.
Oh.
Yeah, so the error, the actual error you were getting was not necessarily I actually still don't know why. Weird. Why you got it and I didn't. Anyway, fine though.
Gotta
Yeah,
work
now
it.
mine should now work with the redirect. So if I go back to mine now, share screen, back to mine. So yeah, for anyone who didn't realize it, line 15, I forgot these on the constant navigate equals use navigate. You want to put the parentheses to say so that it actually pulls the navigate system out. Otherwise, it's just going to return that use navigate function, and we're not calling the function. We're just assigning navigate to that function. Anyway, so now if I go back to, if I just go home and refresh, log in, 20@test.com, put in my password of test, click the enter button. We see the spinner shows up for a second, and then there we are. Log in, we get sent here. So now the last thing we're gonna do quick though. I do this next tomorrow because I think it's really good. 9/11 already. So yeah, we'll do this tomorrow. So or yeah, maybe tomorrow with like if we get time to do a mini thing, we'll probably do a mini thing, which is where we'll add a logout button to here, and we'll make sure we confirm how exactly this item is hiding those nav buttons. We'll make sure we understand exactly how that's working. All right. Cool. I will see everybody tomorrow. Any questions on the current code? Anyone's code not working? Before we go.
You're gonna upload this tonight too, right?
Yes, I don't know if
Okay.
you guys can work on this tonight. So,
Post.
what I would like to say for homework on this stuff, again, now that we have more time, my challenge for most of you again is one of two things. Spend a little time trying to build a front end for the Expressian app as a way of practicing what we're doing with this. I'm not looking for anything fancy, different looking with that app. I don't care if it looks identical to what we're doing now. So right now, what we want to try to do is, I guess the first thing you need to do, though, of course, is add login systems to your Expressian app. So if you haven't done login for your Expressian app yet, again, this is cohort 14. You guys are playing catch up, so don't worry about this. Your primary homework right now is just catch up. So for cohort 12 and 11, cohort 12 in general, that's the first thing. So if you haven't got authentication in your Expressian app yet, that's the first homework you want to start working on. And then, yeah, doing some practice with React. However, I will again state this as well. If you use your final project can be used as your practice now. So if you'd rather have the practice of React being your final project, that is fine. The Expressian app is not a required item to build in order to pass career devs. The Expressian app is there as a way to practice what we cover in class before you start applying it to a final project or there if you need that, if you feel better for that. Practicing on a final project can be difficult and can be a dangerous feeling because if you do something wrong, you could break your final project. So I can understand the fear of doing that. That's why I have this intermediary there. If you break your Expressian app, not such a big issue. The main thing I want to clarify, of course, is make sure you're using GitHub. And what we'll probably do even tomorrow, if we have a couple minutes before class starts, I will refresh everybody on branching for those of you who want to understand it in case any of those students there do ask about it. Last but not least, if anyone has any uncertainties about Git, please voice them before tomorrow's class in Slack and we get some help, or maybe even meet up with me. Maybe I'll try to see if I can start class like 10 minutes or 15 minutes early on Thursday for anyone who's unsure of Git. We don't need you going there and suddenly being like, yeah, I have no idea what they're talking about.
No, no.
So
Tomorrow is Wednesday.
yeah. I meant
Do we
He's
have
talking
class?
about Thursday.
Thursday.
Okay, just
Sorry.
making sure.
Next class, we'll say that, yeah. For next class. So if you're unsure of Git, do not wait till next class to get some assistance on it. I'm fairly confident you're all pretty familiar with the basics of Git add, git commit, git init, git add, git commit, git push.
Get push, get clone, get status,
Oh,
get
cool.
init.
Yep, those, yep, git status, git clone, yep. Yeah, those are the ones you need to know. If you don't know about branch, not a big deal, but if you do want to learn, if you guys do feel you could benefit from it, make sure branching is nice. So again, what branching allows you to do is to separate your code into a new branch. And if you mess up your code, you can then remove the branch and go back to your original stuff. So go back to your master branch and it'll be back to normal. Nothing that you did will be there. The only thing you have to worry about, of course, is your database. You may mess up your database, but you can always reset your database.